Year 10 and 11, welcome to your analysis of Gerald from an Inspector Calls in preparation for your AQA English Literature exam. It is vitally important that we begin an Inspector Calls by analysing the context of the play. During the 1930s, J.B. Priestley became very concerned about the consequences of social inequality in Britain, and in 1942, Priestley and others set up a new political party called the Commonwealth Party. This party merged with the Labour Party in 1945, but Priestley was influential in developing the idea of the welfare state, which began to be put into place at the end of the war. He believed that further world wars could only be avoided through cooperation and mutual respect between countries, and so became active in the early movement for a United Nations. J.B. Priestley wrote the play in 1945, but set it in 1912, so it is vital that we look at society at the time. So down the left, as you can see, 1912. The First World War would start in 2 years. Berlin's optimistic view that there would not be a war is completely wrong. Remember, he also makes a statement about how the Titanic won't sink. There were strong distinctions between the upper and the lower classes in 1912, as demonstrated throughout the play. Women were subservient to men. All a well-off woman could do was get married. A poor woman was seen as cheap labour, as we know. We are told that in the play. The ruling classes saw no need to change the status quo. Now, if we look over at 1945, when Priestley was writing, the Second World War ended on the 8th of May. People were recovering from nearly 6 years of warfare, danger and uncertainty. Class distinctions had been greatly reduced as a result of the two world wars. As a result of the wars, women had earned a more valued place in society. There was a great desire for social change immediately after the Second World War. Clement Attlee's Labour Party won a landslide victory over Winston Churchill and the Conservatives. So that is the time that Priestley is writing in. But as he sets it in 1912, there are massive differences between the societies. So Gerald, we'll start off dead basically with who is he, and then we'll analyse more in depth as we go. So who is Gerald? He is Sheila's fiance. He is from a well-respected family, the Crofts. He works for Crofts Limited, his father's firm, which is bigger than Berlin and Company, and we find that out in Act 1. The two companies are friendly rivals, and he will take over it when his father retires. In the wider scheme of things, Gerald represents the selfish attitudes of the upper class. He played a key part in the chain of events contributing to the death of Eva Smith. He lets the audience down. We had hoped that he would change his attitude, but he doesn't. It conveys how ingrained these attitudes were in the upper class and how difficult it was to change them. If we remember, this exam is unseen, so we won't have the play in front of us. So remembering quick quotations is vital. So on the next two slides, I've just put some quick, important quotations, either about Gerald or said by Gerald. So if we start with his introduction to the play, we are told that he is an easy, well-bred young man about town. So straight away, his introduction, man about town. Now, a man about town means that he's a sophisticated male who frequents bars often and knows where to dine and is a fashionista, if you like. So quite popular within society, on the social scene. To carry on there, now listen, darling, is obviously when he's speaking to Sheila, and we know the position of women at the time. If you've watched my Sheila video, it's explained there. And women had no voice in society. They didn't have any power. They weren't valued. And he speaks down, I suppose, to Sheila here, and he's very condescending, and that shows you the power he holds, I suppose, if you like. But also, he's a stereotypical male at the time and believes that his fiancée to be, Sheila, should answer to him and should listen to him. Now, when we first hear about Daisy Renton / Eva Smith, Gerald is much like Mr. Berlin. He denies that he even knows her. He does confess as the play progresses, but he does initially come across as another Mr. Berlin. All right, I knew her. Let's leave it at that. He doesn't want to divulge any extra information because deep down he knows that he's had an affair with her. The big quotation here is, I don't come into this suicide business. So at the start of the play, he can't see how he's involved. And as I say, that is a parallel of Mr. Berlin, of this upper class mentality that it's not our fault. And they deny it all the way through. He tries to hide the truth from the inspector from the very start. And it's Sheila who criticises him for that. And it's Sheila who realises how he reacts when he hears the name Daisy Renton. So he attempts to block the inspector's pursuit of the truth, but he can't. Pulling himself together, stage directions. Don't forget, you can use your stage directions, and you should. This is a play. Now look at the stage directions there, pulling himself together. He's deeply disturbed by the fact that she's dead. He's had an affair with her and, I suppose, affected her life. Do you mind if I get a drink, Sheila? Clearly he's upset at what he's about to explain. And all of a sudden, the guy who was saying, listen, darling, has subtly been replaced with someone who's asking Sheila, asking a woman for a drink. So we realise that actually Gerald is bothered by what's happened. And the stage directions once again shows Gerald's reaction to what he is, and that's distressed. Sheila is also described as distressed as well when she is being interrogated, and we know that Sheila is deeply moved and actually changes. Sorry, I've suddenly realised that she's dead. So there's an emotional connection here, an emotional change within Gerald. So he's needed a drink to pull himself together, and now all of a sudden he's distressed because she's dead and he's been in contact with her, but more so he's had sexual relations with her. And we get that in the story he tells. I insisted on Daisy moving into these rooms and I made her take some money to keep her going. So we know, as the story unravels, that Gerald meets Daisy Renton in the Palace Bar, and actually he rescues her from that man, Alderman McGarty, because he feels sorry for her. Ironically, he keeps her as a mistress for a few months. Eventually this comes to an end. The sad thing, though, is that he was aware that Daisy Renton had feelings for him, but obviously he didn't reciprocate. And I suppose that's the sad thing about the relationship between Gerald and Eva / Daisy, that she really did have feelings for him and they weren't reciprocated. And therein lies some of our sympathy for her. He talks about her death, and as I said earlier, he is genuinely upset. He has to actually go for a walk. I'm rather more upset by this business than I probably appear to be. So he goes outside. The audience assume that he's learned his lesson and that he's going to change for the better. After all, he had initially acted out of kindness, which actually suggests that Gerald isn't a bad man or a bad character, that he just gave in to lust and cheated on Sheila. And obviously he let Daisy Renton go when it suited him, so he's far from blameless. But as I say, when he goes outside, I'm rather more upset by this business than I appear to be. The audience think, oh, this upper class man is going to change his ways, his attitude, his views on society. When he returns, though, he has news that the inspector is an imposter. And he returns to the man he was at the beginning of the play. The fact that he still did what he did does not make him change like Sheila and Eric. And he offers Sheila the ring back. Everything's all right now, Sheila, holds up the ring. What about this ring? And she replies it's too soon. Sheila, as well as the audience, need Gerald to change his attitude and take responsibility for his actions. Because he has quickly forgotten how poorly he treated Sheila and Daisy/Eva. And that is why the audience is so disappointed when he returns at the end. Because he's the man he was at the beginning. The man who avoided responsibility. So just a quick summing up of Gerald there. At the beginning, he's described as attractive. He's about 30. He's well bred. He is an aristocrat. He's the son of the Lord and Lady Croft. And actually, they aren't very happy about his engagement to Sheila. He is not as willing as Sheila to admit his part in the girl's death to the inspector. And that's when we question whether or not he's exactly the same as Mr. Berlin and just wants to protect his own interests. Gerald, however, did have genuine feelings for Daisy Renton. He is moved when he hears that she's dead. He explains his story that he arranged for her to live in his friend's flat. And the quote there is, "because I was sorry for her." She becomes his mistress and he tells us that she's pretty. But as I said, despite all of this, in Act 3, he tries to come up with as much evidence as possible to prove that the inspector is fake. Because he wants to get let off with what he has done. It is Gerald who confirms that the local force has no officer called Gould. And it is he who realises it may not have been the same girl, and he who finds out from the infirmary that there's not been a suicide in months. He seems to throw his energy into protecting himself rather than changing, unlike his fiancée, Sheila. And at the end of the play, he has not changed. He has not gained a new sense of social responsibility, which is why Sheila is unsure whether to take the ring back. Let's imagine that this is an example question that you could be asked. Does Gerald change in an inspector calls? You are given 30 marks and then also 4 marks in this exam. It gives you bullet points, and the bullet points might say something like, write about how he responds to Daisy Renton's death, how Priestley presents Gerald by the way he writes. I'm going to give you an example in 2 seconds. So your example opening might read like this. As the play is set in 1912, Gerald Croft is presented as a stereotypical upper-class man. He was born into wealth and will inherit his father's company, Crofts Limited. He is much like Mr. Berlin in his ideas about social class and therefore represents the ideals of a conservative government. Priestley informs the audience that he's handsome, wealthy, 30 and is the easy, well-bred young man about town. Initially, the audience has hope that Gerald will change after he realises his role within Eva/Daisy's downfall. However, as the play progresses, the audience are disappointed to discover he is much like Mr. Berlin. Your social and historical context are in green there. I think any question on an inspector calls, whether it be theme or character, must refer to the social and historical context because it supports everything that Priestley is telling us about and using as a metaphor. Yeah, he uses the entire play as propaganda in support of the Labour Party. He uses Mr. Berlin to show us the stupidity of the conservative ideals, if you like. He shows us that Sheila changes and that at the end, social responsibility and taking responsibility for your actions is probably the way forward. Okay, so any question must refer to social and historical context. You need to revise quick quotations as well because you won't have the book with you. One-word quotations are fine, so don't massively panic, but I would read the play maybe 4 times. I hope this has been useful. If you need any more of my videos, just type my name into YouTube, which is Stacey Reay, Stacey, and Reay is Reay. And good luck in your English literature exam.